morning. It's so nice to see you again. And welcome to the Art and Imagination Studio this morning. We're going to do a watercolor, and I've chosen a stork, a white stork with a little bit of black on his tail. And as you see, I have put him on a board, like so, and taped him down, my watercolor paper, because if I don't, then the paper may warp as we put water on it. So I'm going to start by putting some water and being very careful not to touch the stork with the water, because the watercolor will go right where I want it to go, or the paint, I should say. I want it to go in between these trees, and I don't care if I get a little bit of watercolor paint on the trees, but I want to put a little color in between that for like a, morning sunshine, or morning or evening it could be. But I'm going to put a little bit of red back there behind him, because this stork is white, like I said. And we want color behind him that he will stand out with his white body. So therefore, you just keep adding the water and pulling the paint up, because I want it to be lighter on the top. So therefore, I'm going to pull that paint up as much as possible. And I'm just going to keep adding as I go. And the water will stay there till it dries. And I'll pull the puddle of water I got up on top of this and pull it down, the color down a little bit better. And I'm using a brush that is very thin at the tip, so that I can get around his body easily. So now that we got that part of the sky done, I'm going to go and do the same thing in the next, between the trees here. Need a little more color on my brush here, because I want it a little bit darker. And yeah, we have to paint the sky in between these trees. And that's fun. Let's see how your skills are doing since we've last met. And this is so much fun. I enjoy doing this. And as you can see, the graphic pencil that I use is pulling off into the color, but I'll fix that later. I'm not worried about it now. But it looks like he's on an outline here. So I'm going to go up here and put a little more color up here over his head. And I will now eventually start with the blues. And I'll put a little bit of blue in there, a little bit of gray. Whoops, not enough in that little bowl. Okay, I'll have to go to my palette then. My paint palette. So I'm putting water in between. Let's get these paints nice and wet, because we want a kind of a thin paint to start off with, and we can always go add as we go along. But where you put the water, the paint will not go beyond that. So I'm going to do the other side. And it looks like I have put some water where I don't want it. So I'll clean that off, come down here and put it in between here. And it stops there, so I'll get some blue. And I want it, like I said, very thin paint, because we're not at the best part and the fun part of detail. And detail I absolutely love. Put a little water over here. And while this is still wet, I want to add some of that little red into this blue here and let it fade up. I know it doesn't look like much right now, but however, when I put those tree trunks in, it's going to look really where you understand it. Looks kind of funny right now. It just takes time and patience. Watercolor is a floating. I like to float it. What I mean by floating is put a lot of water in there in the space I want the color and just float the color in there. And as you see, I do each side separately so that I can have it pretty even. And I'm going to stop this guy right there. Because I'm going to put some ground on there, so I'm going to put some brown in there. And I hope you can see the color that's going in here. It's really pretty. I'm going to kind of pull some of that red out of there. And you can go back and move it around. People say you can't move it, but you can. At least if you put water on, clean water on your brush, you can move it around. Okay. Now you have to work on watercolor in different spots, because once you get this sky in, you're going to have to let it kind of seep into the paper. But I want that just as a thought back there for the blue sky. Okay, let's go to the other side. I've got to watch where my trees are that I've drawn on there. Now you can either draw something or you can copy something and trace it for your picture if you're not into drawing. And a lot of artists do trace it onto the paper. It saves time for them, but sometimes I like to draw it, sometimes I like to trace it. Doesn't matter. It all comes out the same in the wash, as they say. But I enjoy doing watercolor. It is relaxing. And this is your hour or half an hour that we're going to spend together, that you do something creative. And you can paint a picture for your bathroom or whatever that you like painting. Now the lower part of these trees are going to be darker, so I'm going to go back in there with some more blue and float it up so that I can have a little bit darker bottom, because of the trees you will have shadows in here in between, and the sky will be light. Oh, more water. Here we go. But I kind of wanted a sunny thing in the middle, sunny color that the sun creates in the mornings or in the evenings. Because there will be shadows on this, and I got too much on that. So you kind of got to watch what you're doing, where you put your water. Because like I said, the paint will flow wherever that water is. And won't go beyond that. Okay, we're almost finished with the sky. This is kind of redundant in a way, repetitious, however you want to put it. But it's going to get you there. You'll be amazed how this is going to turn out when you start putting the details in there. Doesn't look like much in the beginning, as every painting that you do, whether it's acrylic, oil, or watercolor. It's kind of look not so great when you first start it. But as you go along and start adding things, it's going to be pretty. Now, my brush just dropped a big blop of water in there. So I have to take that out. And there's really no such thing as a mistake. You can't make a mistake in watercolor. Okay, now we've got that to that point. Now, this is going to be water down here also, but I've got a log sitting in here. So I'm going to kind of dry paint this log. I'm not going to put a bunch of water on there, and I'm going to make it a dark brown. And I'm going to kind of outline it behind the bird, because this log has fallen down into the water. And I'm going to leave some white spaces, because people will judge your watercolor by the white that you have left in your painting. So I want to get this log in there with just straight color and a little bit of water. Got to have a little bit. Now I got this branch growing up into the trees in the background. So I don't want to get up in there because that brown will go into the sky. And I'm very careful to go around this bird. They are magnificent animals. They're water birds. And he's got little white feathers coming down from his body onto his legs. So I don't want to get too much into that. But as you can see, this is a kind of a light brown that I'm putting on, because I'm going to go back in when it dries and make it look like it's got bark on the log. So there'll be some detail in that too. The bird's not so much of a detail thing. He's pretty easy. And I'm going to streak a little bit, leaving some white in here. Trying to anyway. Now, if I don't have the white, or if I should cover over the white where I want it, I use gesso to go back into the details and to put the white where I want it. Because even this log, and we got to figure out where the light's coming from, so I figure that the light's coming from the left, shining down through this bird. So the top of this log will be lighter than the bottom part. So we'll make that darker as we go along. But this is fun. It's not rocket science in a sense. Some people say it is, but I say it's not. It's not that hard. You draw a picture that you like, and then you paint it with watercolor. I like watercolor because you can soften it up and make it so soft. Now, I've got an opening in this log here. So I'm going to clean my brush and go back into the brown. And I'm going to put the tips a little bit darker, that where this tree has fallen and broken off. But I'm not going to go back into the deepest part of this log laying there. So we'll get this all ready. Like I said, it's never going to look like much until you get to the detail part. And already some of this is kind of dried back there. Now I've got a rock over here on the left side that I want to put on. And I know the water's going to be blue with white in it, with a little bit of current going through the water. So you have to kind of plan about it, but myself, I think about the picture after I've drawn it and what I'm going to do. Now there's also some little mounds back here that I'm just going to put a light golden color on it. I want it to be colorful. The bird is white and black, so we have to fill this in to make him show up. So I want color behind him and around him. And I can see that I pressed my brush too far on that. And over here is some more. We'll put some gold in there for the little sand mounds. And you just kind of paint along, you know, leisurely. Because you're just filling in, you want to get this page filled, and then it'll dry enough that you can go back in and start really working on it. Okay, we've got some background ones. Now the ones in the back are going to be lighter, and as you come closer down to here, it's going to be darker. And we're going to paint this from the paper, and we're going to paint up like this because we want to make this bird kind of 3D. So we got to think about that as we go along. So I want a darker color in there. So I think I'll mix another kind of a brown to go back behind this little sand barge. So it'll be a different tone of brown. Kind of a reddish brown back in there, because we want that darker. And right now it's just a color that we put on there, kind of indicate that there's some color back in there, because we'll go back in and make it darker as we go along. And that's going to give you some depth in your painting. And we will fix those up when we get ready. Now I think this is dry enough. There's no more water spots in there. I'm going to do trees. So I'm going to go into a darker brown, in a sense, and paint these trees. Now I'm not going to put water on the trees that are back there. These are tall, thin trees. So I'm going to start in the middle, because I'm great for putting my hand in the paint if I start to the right or the left. So I'm going to start over here and color those trees in. People laugh and they say artists do nothing but color all the time. Well, that's kind of true. We do. but it's a little bit different than just sitting and using a coloring book. But it's a great way to learn to use color, however. So we're going to be careful going around him. The paper is still wet under here, but we'll make more sense of this picture when we get these tree trunks in. And there again, just like the log that's laying in the water, we will do detail on these trees when we get the color in. And let's just throw them in there. Because you're going to put a mat around this anyway, so if you don't get all the way to the top where the tape is, it's okay. Now, as you can see, I just made tree trunks. I didn't bother to put anything else on these trees because that comes in the detail department. Looks okay. So I'm leaving a little bit of white in some of these, like the lights shining in through there on the tree trunks. Some is a little darker. I just put my brush down into the painted of blue. So I'll have to make a limb there. I mean, you can make your mistakes work for you. That's for sure. And keep a light touch. I didn't do that on that one. But I'll get him, I'll fix him. And so will you if you make mistakes, like I said. This is easy to do, just color in between the lines. And you don't always have to be just right on. Because we can cover up mistakes. And they're not really, let's call them accidents. And I've got long hair on this brush, so I'm getting used to them because I don't usually have this long of a brush end, the hairs on there. But I'm just kind of learning with it, so I'm learning with you too, so. But I like the way that it works. If you do it right, and I'm trying to show you how to do it right. And I don't always make it right, but I try. And that's all that counts. You can do it if you just try. And it takes practice like anything else. Anything that you want to learn, like a musical instrument or painting, cooking, excuse me, cooking or whatever, losing my voice. Everything takes practice. Well, if the top is wide, we got to make the bottom wide. And darker. You don't want to make them all look alike. You don't want just sticks out there. Grab my brush off a little bit. Here I go. If you're painting, I should have started over here, but I didn't. But if you're painting, put that little finger out there and hold your brush down. You don't want to get your fingers into the wet paint. So I use that little finger. I do a good stretch here. And as you notice, I've left some space down here under these trees because I want to put a little bit of grassy area there and not just have it all brown. But I'll bring it down, but we can also put bushes in there. It doesn't matter. We'll get it done. She isn't crying. That cough made my eyes water. Well, we're getting close to time to having to close this session of Art and Imagination. But we will be here next time, waiting for you to join us again as we paint this stork, this white stork. So I'm going to close up now, pretty much. But if you want to go on painting this, like I said, I'm going to put some grassy areas in here up among these tree roots and stuff like that. And we're going to go on and we're going to do this rock down here, and then we're going to do the water, and we're going to leave the stork for last. So I hope you'll join us again when we do our stork again, and I'm happy to have you so in our studio today, and come back and see us again. We're happy to enjoy our time together with you. So bye for now.
Yeah, we hanged up the picture that you gave us.
Is that right?